Okay, one more presentation before the lunch break. This will be from Alex Leutgöb from Felgo. I met Alex first time in Shanghai, as you do, right? And we worked together on a project, and I know Alex and his company to be real experts in when it comes to QML. And I think today he will be talking about this as well. Especially, I think your specialty, the hot reloading of QML. Felgo guys do that a lot. You will see that. And have lots of fun with the talk. And yeah, stage is yours.
Thank you, Christoph. Okay, thanks for joining. As Christoph already mentioned, I'm Alex from Felgo, and today I'm talking about the QML Hot Reload in practice. As it is called here, how to improve review meetings for remote teams. My talk is a bit of a story, actually. First of all, I want to talk about how the pandemic actually changed our way of working. I think the pandemic and remote working is more or less connected, even though we wouldn't have seen it before the pandemic. I want to talk about tools that we are actually using. In the end, I also want to show one way how we are actually doing review meetings with our customers, being a remote team. So that's more or less the agenda for today. Let's start with a short introduction about Felgo, my company, and myself. First of all, about Felgo. We at Felgo, we are a Qt technology partner and a Qt service partner. We are on the market for more than 10 years now already. We are located in Austria. Our headquarters are in Vienna, Austria, and we also have a secondary office in Linz in Austria. And we are a team of around 25 people right now. What's the vision at Felgo? Actually, we love Qt and we want to provide developers with all they need to create stunning cross-platform applications. And that's actually also our mission. So we try to provide tools and services to save time and to make development easier. And we are actually doing that in two areas. The first area is our Felgo SDK, which is our Qt-based product. It's a cross-platform framework. We are extending Qt with more than 200 additional APIs. For example, for the mobile use cases, for iOS, for Android, to have like push notifications, to have in-app pages and so on. But we also provide unique Qt tooling that you can use without Felgo, so just for plain Qt projects. For example, like Felgo Live, which is our QML Hot Reload solution. Goal of Felgo SDK is, again, to allow rapid development for all Qt-supported platforms, especially for mobile, but also for embedded and desktop. And our second area is actually the development services, so the Qt professional services. We are aiming to provide our knowledge and our experience that we gathered while creating a Qt-powered product to our customers. So we are doing project and product consulting, and we are also doing Qt training and workshops, especially for QML beginners, but also like for advanced topics with QML. And we're also looking for projects, so if you would have a need to outsource some Qt development or need help on specific things, especially in the mobile area, please just reach out. And finally, about me. As already mentioned, I'm Alex Leutgöb. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Felgo. I'm working with Qt for more than 15 years now already. It actually all started with Felgo, where I put my strong focus on mobile platforms, which I already brought into Felgo, when we worked on bringing Android and iOS to Qt for. So we wrote the custom renderer, for example, that had native OpenGL performance on Android and iOS, and used that in conjunction with Qt 4 to actually have the first Qt-powered apps and also games in former days actually up and running on Android and iOS back then in 2012. Custom renderer is probably worth another topic, another talk. So let's keep it for now. Okay, I already mentioned. Actually, the talk is also about the pandemics and the challenges, and also about the implications for remote work and collaboration that we actually faced. We all know what happened in 2019, 2020. And keeping all the mental and personal implications beside, actually everything changed from a business standpoint. So before the pandemic hit, it was still unknown, I guess, for many businesses how actually things like employment, like working hours, like using office locations and so on changed. But overnight we actually all started to learn. And yeah, we needed to adapt. So there were new challenges. We had to create new working models. We had to use new technology, introducing new tools probably in workflows. And I guess everyone who was not able to actually adapt and adapt quickly, yeah, failed hard, I guess. Let's look at those challenges I mentioned right now. And there is a good study I found from Microsoft, which I want to use for the beginning. Microsoft was actually asking their employees how they are doing while going remote. So they were asking their employees a few months within the pandemic how they are actually doing. And the goal was actually to find out how the pandemic affected the daily work lives of their employees. And the results were actually that there are multiple aspects of the work routine that actually changed. And I want to give you a quick summary about the study in the following slides. You can also give it a read at the source. Yeah. So the first challenge actually Microsoft identified were the flexible working hours. And I guess a lot of you will tell actually flexible working hours are also like a bonus or like an advantage coming out from the pandemic. But this also has strong disadvantages. First of all, employees reported that by losing the usual 9-to-5 work cycle, they actually lost the structure in the working hours. So this also means like that the boundaries between the office and the home life actually blurred. So the work-life balance was completely out of balance. Also overtime, speaking of there is no more 9-to-5, about 7 out of 10 employees extended their working hours at least by 3 hours per week, and also even worked on like on the weekends. And also the message exchange between colleagues actually increased. So there were, according to the people at Microsoft, there were around 70% more messages exchanged after 5 p.m. up until to midnight. So this would be usually the time when you leave the office, closing the laptop, communication is going on. And I guess, yeah, if you were working in an office and not fully remote then before the pandemic, you might also have noticed that. And speaking of communication, speaking of messages, there is also the challenge of communication. So if you again look at the study, actually we see that scheduled meetings increased, that ad hoc meetings between colleagues increased, that it got overall more difficult to actually communicate within the team. But on the other hand, more than half of all people reported that they have the feeling that the amount of brainstorming sessions strongly decreased, and also that the knowledge flow between team members really decreased. So what we see here is more or less there is more overhead with communication, but less time for creativity to actually really working on things you want to work on. Yeah, so we saw more overhead for meetings, but this actually does not mean there is more social interaction. There is more social interactions, right? With going fully remote, this means there are no coffee breaks anymore in the office kitchen, there are no after-work beers anymore, and so on and so on. And actually companies try to replicate those social activities. There are, for example, a virtual coffee break meetings. I heard of a lot of companies who actually introduced that one, and I'm not sure who of you is actually regularly attending a virtual coffee break meeting. Get up, which is good, yeah. And I'm not sure how this is actually for you. I guess it's different, right? It's not the same like having like a real talk in the office kitchen.
You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always the same people. It's not the mix that you usually get to meet some people, but yeah, still always the same people meet for tea/coffee at 3.
Exactly. And that's actually also what Microsoft found out. So about 3/4 of all people reported that they miss the social interaction with colleagues. And this is not only Microsoft, this is not only QtDev, this is only what we actually see at Felgo, for example. At Felgo, we even saw that before the pandemic. So we've had very flexible working environments from the very beginning. Most of our people are around our offices, but we also have people working partly or fully remote. And we only see those people like a couple of times a year. And that's actually also a reason why we are doing something that's called the Felgo Power Week. It's a Felgo Power Week. We meet once a quarter, and we gather the entire team from all over the world to come together at a single location. And it works that way that actually people can work on own topics, on own projects. They can freely choose those, and they're working on those projects during the usual working hours. So this can be like a prototype for an app idea you have in mind. This can be like a Udemy course. This can be, for example, like just using new technology or researching new tools, or just working on polishing things that you wanted to do during your usual working time, but you actually never found time for it. And in the afternoon and the evenings, we are actually doing team events. And we met at several places already, of course, in the office, but for example, we also went to Morocco for a surfing trip. We went to a beautiful lake for a sailing trip, and so on and so on. And yeah, since the pandemic, we actually did 2 Power Weeks. And what we saw at Felgo is that it's now after the pandemic, it's more about the social interaction, about communicating with each other, about spending time together, and it is less about doing the projects that are actually like the main idea of the Power Week. And yeah, that's also what we saw actually. Now I talked a lot about like communication and about people in general, but there are also new challenges on the leadership and management level. First of all, and probably the biggest issue, is keeping people motivated. So how to make sure that people can actually still work on their tasks, still work on the projects by keeping the motivation high. And yeah, companies try it with virtual events, like I already mentioned, the virtual coffee break. There might be a virtual FIFA tournament. There might be the virtual Christmas party, and so on and so on. But I think, yeah, that's still like the biggest challenge right now. And in parallel, there is also like the challenge of sustaining the team productivity. So how to make sure that you're actually having feedback cycles, that people get feedback regularly, that they get the things they need, that they are not blocked, that they are like reachable, and so on. So that's also a big challenge from the management level. And now that the situation gets better and the COVID restrictions are easing up a bit, there is also like the challenge of creating a hybrid work environment. I found that study actually was done by PwC for US companies, and they were actually asking how the future of remote working would look like in the US. Again, it's US companies, it's probably not really like for our sector, but what we can get from it is actually that only 70% of all companies stated that they are going back to on-site only. Around 26% told that they are continuing with a hybrid model. And even though 11% said, okay, we are going fully remote, there is no going back to the office. And what we see is actually there is like a big piece in that cake is actually that there will be a hybrid working environment. And that's actually a challenge for organizations. So how to actually structure and how to design that hybrid working environment to not like piss off people in the end, to not create like a big employee dissatisfaction. And that's actually not only like an issue for smaller companies or bigger companies or companies, like that's across all companies. So even, not sure if you heard of that example, like cool companies like Apple, for example, who just built a completely new campus in California, also struggling to actually bring back people. So for example, the former director of machine learning of Apple actually resigned from all of his positions because he was forced to going back 2 days a week to the office, and he was actually not agreeing to that one. So you see, actually a lot of companies are struggling with that one. Good, and probably the last challenge I want to point out is actually giving feedback remotely. So giving good and constructive feedback is a key to collaboration, and it was already hard before the pandemic, before going remotely. Feedback can help to, of course, to like getting tasks done and getting like the strategy done, but it's also important for keeping communication ongoing in the team. And it also fosters learning and the knowledge transfer within the team. So that's very crucial points for giving feedback. And the issue now with giving feedback purely remotely is actually that we are missing all the conversational cues within written feedback. So like body language, like things like the tone of voice, and so on and so on. And so I also noted some good practices, some tips that you actually can follow. First of all, make sure if you're giving feedback remotely to use clear language, to ask clear questions. Make sure that the person who is actually receiving the feedback does not make assumptions and can misinterpret the message that you want to tell actually. Also use tools. So for example, use screen recording tools if you want to show something and attach a video to a written feedback. Also use emojis. They are not only like in text messages, but they can also like transport real feelings or real urges within feedback. So we use a lot of emojis actually when giving feedback at Felgo. And also crucial, try to set up feedback processes that are unified across an organization, across departments. For example, there is one feedback process or one feedback framework that's introduced by Asana. They're calling it the do, try, and consider approach. So what they are basically doing is they are categorizing feedback in 3 different categories. The do is like a mandatory feedback, so that more or less overrules the team. This should be used only rarely, but this is sometimes necessary to actually achieve goals. Then there is the category of the try feedback, which is you think the current solution should be iterated. So you can give like hints and point out that there should be some more explorative steps within the current task. And then there is the consider feedback, which means you can give tips and you can give more input, but it does not necessarily mean that you need to change the current solution. It should just, again, foster the learning, and ultimately it's important for coaching. So use the consider feedback often, according to Asana. It's a great read. Really recommend that you take some time and give it a read. So to close that chapter, actually, I talked a lot about challenges, and there is like one obvious solution to it, and this is collaboration tools, which can help a lot. Collaboration tools from the project management side, like Jira, but also also collaboration tools like using GitHub, GitLab, and so on. So also from the tech side, use them often. They really help to actually maintain efficiency and productivity. For example, you're not blocked by team members. You can check the state of a current task. It helps yourself to prioritize things and also to manage your workflows. And it also helps from the project management side. So you can discuss projects and tasks just like in a Jira ticket. You can access documentation and entry through notes. You can also restore previous versions, for example, or just check who is actually changing which things in the project. And ultimately, it also helps managers to track the process of the project. So it's not required that a manager actually asks 4 times a day, how is that task and how is the progress and are you blocked and do you need that and that and that. So it really helps to be productive and that you are able to work on your things actually. So my summary here is communication is hard if you're going fully remote, and it's even harder if there are multiple departments involved, like design to development and so on. A lot of departments use different tools, and then communication is more harder. But besides those challenges I mentioned, there are also opportunities to improve and to get more productive if you're using the right tools. And I guess this is also true for software development, where the right tools can remove a lot of friction and can help. And I put QML here now as a tool, which is not a tool, of course, but in that sense, I see it as a tool. This is just like QML, which is for me the perfect tool for closing the gaps between, for example, design, development, and the product team. And why this is so, actually, I will talk about that in the next chapter, which I called QML to the rescue. Some quick facts about QML and Qt Quick. I hope you all already use QML. QML is actually the language, not the tool, as I mentioned on the previous slide. And Qt Quick is a UI framework that makes use of QML as a programming language. Both are actually very major. So they are in the Qt SDK for more than 10 years now. And one big advantage of QML and one thing of QML is that the language is actually declarative. So you have that JSON-like syntax where you define a tree of objects for visual items, but also for the behavior, and you can add additional logic via JavaScript. So very easy to use. And in in addition to the fact that QML is declarative, QML is also reactive, which is a buzzword right now, so I also mentioned it here. It's reactive in the way that there are actually programming concepts like the property bindings, the signal handlers, and the connections that can easily make QML a reactive language. And actually the declarative style and the reactive style have a lot of advantages for using QML for your user interfaces. First of all, it follows the Qt approach of code once, run anywhere. So if you're creating a QML UI, it's actually already ensured by the QML engine that it's also working on different platforms, and it looks and probably behaves the same on different platforms. It's easy to learn and to use, and it also makes it very easy to prototype. So Marco talked about like doing some scribble some prototype on paper in the talk before mine. I actually oftentimes just open Qt Creator and adding some rectangles and some text to just do a quick prototype and check how this is actually working. It's really useful, and I use it more than actually using a sheet of paper and a pen. And because of this declarative style, it actually also saves a lot of code. And it's easy to maintain and to apply changes. And as a bonus, it's also testable with unit tests, and you can also use UI testing frameworks like Squish from the former FrogLogic company. So that's really like also something that you should consider in your user interface development. If you're interested in QML and if you're not using QML yet, we're also giving some trainings. You can learn more about that on felgo.com/training offers. But there are also the QtDev YouTube channels and the QtDev trainings, so those are also great learning materials for getting started with QML and Qt Quick. Good. Now we learned actually to love QML. But how can we use QML to actually get even more productive? And that's where I want to introduce the QML Code Reload, or as I put it here, stop waiting for builds. So let's look at the usual development process. If you're having a project, we are writing code, we are saving the changes, and then we are compiling and building those changes, deploying it to our test devices, and then doing the tests. And after doing the tests, we are iterating on the code, we are polishing it, or we are just working on new features. And if you point out two of those steps, actually the compile and deploy steps, those are actually the most time-consuming steps in regards that they are not using your productive time, but you're just waiting until builds are actually finished and you can test your code. And depending on the size of the project, this can take up from, let's say, 10 seconds to 5 minutes for a mid-sized project. Of course, there are projects which probably take an hour or something like that, but let's only use a mid-sized project, and let's say it's 10 seconds to 5 minutes. So you wait 10 seconds to 5 minutes for just compiling and deploying a project. Now let's assume you're not only having one test device and one platform, but you want actually to test multiple devices and multiple platforms. So this already multiplies for every test device, and for every platform you're using, you need to deploy the code and then test it on that device. And you're not doing that once a day, of course, but you're doing that 100 times or 200 times a day, and this again multiplies. So in the end, you're spending a lot of time actually just by waiting to have the code compiled and have it deployed to your devices. So it would actually be nice if you can just cut out those compile and deploy steps. And that's actually possible, and that's where Code Reload comes into the game. So what is Code Reload? With Code Reload, actually changes in code can be applied automatically to a running program without the build, compile, package, and deploy steps. So there is no manual restart of the application required, but the changes are applied in seconds. And this is perfect for incremental UI building and iterating on UI and UX code. You can find errors early, you can fix errors early, and you can also iterate on UI code, making it pixel perfect according to the design. The Code Reload is actually well known from web languages, from web technologies, but a lot of people actually don't know that this is also perfectly suitable for QML and JavaScript to create user interfaces. And for that one, I actually want to introduce two solutions today. And the first one is the QML preview. QML preview, I often refer to it as like of a spin-off from the Qt Automotive suite. It's integrated into Qt Design Studio, and I guess Qt Creator since version 7, if I remember it correctly. The QML preview actually reloads your QML and JavaScript changes without recompiling your code. We can probably have a quick look at the QML preview. For that one, I'm actually opening up Qt Creator, making it a bit bigger for you. And you can find actually the QML preview in the build menu by just opening the QML preview here. And what's happening now is that the application quickly compiles and then opens like in a window as you are used to it. But now the cool thing is actually that you can change your code and it's applied instantly. So for example, try it by changing the title. Let's say Hello QtDevCon, and we already saw that the title updated actually in our window, which is great. No recompile, no restarting the app, we instantly see all those changes in our app. Let's try a quick demo that you get a feeling about it. Let's say we want to create a prototype, a POC of a dialog that's dynamically opened via loader, and we open that dialog via a button. So we are adding a button in here, giving it the title, which would be like open dialog. And what you now already saw is actually that the preview closed because there was an error in the QML code. But as soon as I saved that again and I start it again, it's actually up and running again. It's still a QML error, that's my error, sorry. It's of course the text property and not the button property. Yeah, that's the demo effect. Okay, great. Let's probably anchor it in the center of our window. Let's do an anchor.center in parent. And saving it. Why is this not working right now? If you see some QML errors, please let me know. Okay, let's give it another try. Sorry, I did not open the QML preview, I just compiled it, keyboard shortcuts. Now we are back with a QML preview, sorry for that one. Okay, now we have our button actually, but it's not doing anything right now. So what we want to do is adding like a dialog, and I added in a loader. So I'm defining a loader with a source component. Let's use a rectangle, giving it the color of just yellow. It already closed again because of the QML error, but as soon as it's fixed, it's opening up again, so that's great. Let's give it like a width of parent.width, like 50%, and height should be width. And we already see our fake dialog right now. And also, yeah, again, center it in the parent of our screen. Okay, great. But now we don't want to actually have that loader always active, but we only want to have it on a button click. So I'm giving it an ID, which is a loader, and I'm just setting it to false, so it's not loaded by default, but adding it an onClicked handler in our button, and onClicked I just set loader.active to true, and it then should open our dialog. Let's check that. Looks great, it works. Probably also let's add some content in here. So I'm adding a text, which is dialog content. To open the dialog again, okay, the content is already in here. Here's a typo. And I also want actually to center it again. Center in parent, saving it, and opening the dialog. Okay, that looks great. Let's use that one actually as our POC. So you see, actually, it's really handy that you can reload your changes, and you don't need to compile and open the app like I did in the beginning of the demo. But you can see changes instantly applied. But what we actually also saw, every time I changed something, for example, going from orange to yellow, and the other way around, I need to open the dialog again to actually see the state of my dialog, because it's a dynamic component, and it's not like in the static root tree of my QML tree. And that's actually an issue, because the application state gets lost on every reload. And this is not that important for that small project most probably, but if you're working on a bigger project, if you're having multiple screens, a lot of dynamically loaded screens and so on, this can also be like a big pain point during testing out your code. And that's actually where QML Hot Reload can help. So what is QML Hot Reload? QML Hot Reload actually, again, applies changes in code automatically to a running program without the compile, build, deploy steps. But plus, Hot Reload also applies code changes without losing the current application state and the context. And that's actually really cool. And there is a second solution for it, which is the Falgo Live tool that provides QML Hot Reload. This is again perfect for incremental UI building because now you also can preserve your application state. You're not losing it. Additionally to the QML preview, you can test on multiple devices and platforms at once, concurrent simultaneously. You can connect multiple devices at once, so you not only have your desktop QML preview, but you can, for example, also run it on your iOS and Android if you are on mobile platforms, but you can also run it on embedded. So it really follows the Qt approach, and it runs on every platform that actually Qt supports. And that allows you, for example, to do cross-platform testing. So you can use Windows with Qt Creator and test on Android and iOS devices or connect a Raspberry Pi and see the changes instantly applied on your like remote devices without the requirement of installing any native SDKs, any tool chains and so on, any sysroutes. It just works. It also integrates with native code and with C++ code, of course, and you can also use Falgo Live with your favorite IDE, so it's a standalone tool, and there are plugins for Qt Creator, but also for Visual Studio Code, for example. So coming back to our demo, I'm also starting up Falgo Live now in parallel, and for Falgo Live we actually have a Qt Creator plugin where you can start it. I'm just pressing that Live Run button in here. And this actually opens up two windows. The first one is the Falgo Live server, as we call it. This is actually the component that's capable of observing your file system, your project, and applying changes to the running app. And the second window is similar to the QML preview we already saw. This is, we call it the live client, but that's more or less like the preview of the thing that you're working on right now. In the Falgo Live server, you also have log output. You have different options that you can set, but yeah, that's nothing we need to take care right now. And let's probably check again our demo. So open the dialog here in the Falgo Live client, and we now have the same state. And if we try to set it back actually to yellow, for example, we see that it's instantly applied to the Falgo Live client. And on the QML preview, I again need to open the dialog to actually see that. Same is like if we are adding a radius. Okay, that was a QML error again, and we see that the QML preview closed again. Like applying a radius of, for example, 15 pixel. We see that, okay, we don't see it because it's now yellow, and that's not the best color to actually showcase something. Changing it to blue. We see that the radius already got applied in the QML preview. We again need to open it. And that's exactly where you can use Hot Reload, and you can make use of the fact that you're actually preserving the state within your application. Good. And I already mentioned you can connect multiple devices. In my demo right now, I only showed like it looks like on desktop. But the cool thing is actually that you can also connect multiple things on the Falgo Live server. For example, here we're having an iPhone connected and an Android phone connected. And those are like screen sharing apps. So we see it's running on Android, it's running on iOS, it's running on desktop here. But you can also connect, as mentioned, any embedded device that you want to connect, any platform. And every time you change something in code, the change is actually automatically applied to all the running applications. So quick recap, comparison between QML Preview and QML Hot Reload. QML Preview runs in Qt Creator and in Qt Design Studio. QML Hot Reload with Falgo Live runs in Qt Creator, Qt Design Studio. It runs standalone. You can use it with your favorite IDE, for example, with the Visual Studio Code plugin, which is in the marketplace. The QML Preview actually supports the desktop preview on with Falgo Live. You can use it on all Qt supported platforms. You can connect multiple devices. You can do simultaneous tests. Both platforms actually support custom C++ code. but the main benefit of the Felgo Live solution is that you can make use of Hot Reload, which is not included in the QML preview. And there is even a bonus. As I mentioned, it's cross-platform, and it works on every platform where Qt actually works. It even works in the web. And the cool thing is about the web that you can create the Felgo Live client, the Hot Reload with WebAssembly. And we did that in a tool that we call the Felgo Cloud IDE, which is actually an improved GitLab experience where we added QML editing. So you're having code completion, you're having like syntax highlighting. You have the Qt documentation integrated, you have the full Git versioning integrated with diffs, with blaming files, with committing, creating branches and merge requests, and you also have that WebAssembly live preview with Hot Reloaded integrated. And additionally, you can even connect your devices as you saw it on the desktop, so you can also connect the embedded device to the Cloud IDE. And I can also give you a quick example how this looks like. So it's at ide.falgo.com. Let's quickly switch to that one. And you see here that it looks like GitLab. That's actually because it's built up on GitLab. And probably let's open that time tracking project I was creating yesterday. So you just need to click on the Web IDE. Each project here actually is a Git repository, so you're really working on your Git files. If I'm pressing the Web IDE, it's actually loading up. And what you see now is actually you're having your source code editor, you're having a full file tree, so your full project is here. And on the right pane, we actually see the live preview, which can be freely resized, so that's fine. And we also see our log output in here. Now what's integrated is actually that you have the full syntax highlighting and the code completion in here. And you can also browse the Qt documentation, so you don't need to switch to an external browser tab. For example, if you want to browse on the Qt APIs, I can just select them here. Hoping I'm connected to the internet actually. Okay, this takes a while, but you all know the Qt APIs actually, I guess. And cool thing is that this also works like right out from the editor. So for example, if I'm opening that issue header in here, I can just have a look, okay, how is actually that row working? And by just pressing F1, usually it also opens the documentation in here. So here is actually, now it's working, great. So for example, I'm setting the cursor on the rectangle, pressing F1, and it's also loading the API documentation of the rectangle. Coming back to the preview, as I mentioned, this is also fully Hot Reload enabled. So for example, if you want to switch the color from that Jira blue, so it's like a time tracking app where you can track your time and it's connected to the Jira backend. Probably just opening the main file, and I can change the Jira blue in here just by setting it, for example, to a predefined value that's already in the Felgo orange color. And again, just by orange color. No. Just by pressing the reload, I see that also the orange color gets instantly applied. And that's not only true like for the main page, but also like for the sub pages. I can also work like if I'm going to the issues overview, I'm seeing, okay, there is a typo in here. I can also open the model. It's a mock model right now. This would actually be loaded like from the backend from Jira. But I can also, for example, just, okay, add a white space to like here QtDevCon and saving it. And what I saw, it's instantly applied in that model, which is really cool. And again, because it's GitLab powered, you can now also open like a commit and review view. You see what you changed actually in each file. You can give it a commit message and then commit it to your master branch, your main branch, or to a feature branch, and then check out that change on a desktop and just work on the desktop again using the same tools. It's like going from the web to desktop and the other way around, and really handy to actually also use Hot Reload on the web with WebAssembly. Okay. So from the technical point of view, how is actually that code reload working? Looking at the QML application architecture of a typical QML app, we actually see that we're having the C++ layer, which is doing the heavy lifting, and there is also like the QML engine in there, which actually loads QML files. And the cool thing is that QML is an interpreted language, and the QML tree can be manipulated at runtime. And that's actually exactly what QML Hot Reload or QML Code Reload does. So it makes use of the interpreted language feature. In that case, the live service, the component that's actually observing file system changes in your project files, in your QML files, in your JavaScript files, or in your assets, and then notifying the live client module about those changes. And the live module is actually creating a diff of the currently running QML application and the new QML application tree actually, and applying that diff to the running application without losing the application state. So what we actually saw is that we can really cut the compile and deploy steps with code reloading, and we are coming down from actually minutes of using in the classical development process to actually seconds to test your code. And that actually already brings me to the end, where I want to point out how we did review meetings with one customer actually, where we made use of existing tools. And then keeping this one short, it was actually 2019 when a US-based automotive Felgo SDK customer asked us to help out to create a new generation of a car repair and insurance management mobile app. Their own team was busy maintaining the existing application generation, so they asked us to actually help out. The applications are very complex actually and process-driven. There are a lot of forms involved, a lot of data that you need to maintain, and that was actually the challenge. The customer was in US time zone, the Felgo team, the development team, was in mid-Europe, and we had to find a way how we can effectively work together, getting the requirements, doing review meetings, and getting the product done. And the challenge was actually not only like we're in different time zones, but the main challenge was that the customer has lots of experience in their own area, but actually the software requirements were not finished yet. So requirements were coming in on short notice. They had that mock-up tool, Balsamic, where they showed us what they need in their application, but there was no documentation. And effectively, the design, the UX, and also the backend was created just in time. The customer pointed it out that we are actually doing an agile project. In the end, it was agile as it can get, so it was more chaotic in the beginning. And there was not only the challenge, but also a real problem. The requirements were coming in on short notice from management in addition to the older requirements. So like the management sold a new feature to a customer and just told, okay, we need to get that in 2 weeks and demo it, and so on and so on. There was an email coming in, there was a Slack message coming in, there was a Jira comment coming in. This was really chaotic. And in the end, we had to iterate on things very often and to let them validate from the customer. And this took a lot of time because we were in different time zones. We had only one overlapping working spot. So the product team from the customer had to reserve a time slot on their forenoon. We had to be late in our working hours. So those are usual issues. We already saw that before the pandemic, of course. But this was not like the ideal working solution. We tried to improve things with our first workflow, so we provided nightly builds. We provided it via Felgo Cloud builds, which already was a huge time saver because we were actually able to deploy test versions via the App Store beta channels, like on Google Play Beta and on Apple Test Flight. But then again, we needed to wait for feedback from the customer to actually incorporate it. And we knew we need to get things optimized. So what we actually did was we split up our team in 2 teams, the core development team, who was actually working on new user stories and bigger features, and a so-called review development team. And the job of the review team was actually to schedule review meetings with the customer at least twice a week, and then work on iterations and getting in requirements on short notice. And for that one, we actually tried a completely new approach where we only need to connect the dots now. And we used the Cloud IDE and we used Hot Reload. So what we actually did was we connected via Zoom with the customer. One of our guys opened the Cloud IDE, shared the screen for a quick review and preview. But we also connected all of the devices of the UX team and of the product team from the customer. We see that here in the Cloud IDE where we see multiple clients now connected. And then we did the actual review. So we changed things, we showed things, we worked on animations, we worked on paddings, for example, if the design team had some issues with it. And in the end, we actually really achieved to ship a first version within 2 months. And the main benefits were actually that we were not only able to demo the current state, but we were also able to work on changes and polishing immediately, right within that meeting. It was a huge time saver because it reduced our follow-up meetings that we, follow-up work actually, that we only needed to work on bugs and not like on the polishing step. And in the end, we got the flows right, we got it validated, and the product team had a first-hand experience by seeing the changes instantly applied, even though they are sitting like more than 1,000 kilometers away, which was really great. Good, and that's actually the end of my presentation. Hope you got some interesting insights and probably some new learnings, and I would be happy to also discuss it and answer some questions now.
So it seems we got a question there. The microphone's going around. All right, another question here then.
Is it still working in projects where QWidgets and QML are both used?
Yes, it's still working. That's like I'm integrating the custom C++ code. So you will compile it once and run it, and then you can apply the QML code changes.
Thanks.
The other question was here.
Thank you. You mentioned several connectors, which are already given, for Android and iOS. What about, you also mentioned Raspberry Pi, but what about embedded devices like IMX8?
Mm-hmm.
How much is the effort to integrate it and get it running on, first time?
That's actually part of our license. So if you're having like a custom board or a custom hardware, we are actually also providing that library. You're getting like a shared library that you need to link to your let's call it development version of the application. You do not link it to your final product, of course, but you're getting like a customized version that's working on your hardware.
Okay, thank you. And for own open source development, your live IDE, is it for free, limited, like over days, or?
For personal use, it's completely free right now. Also, like the Hot Reload, there are clients already in the app stores for Android and iOS that you can use for personal use, and for students, it's completely free to use.
Okay, I'm not a student anymore. Thank you.
Are there other questions in the audience? There on this side.
So how does it really decide what the application state is? For example, in your dialogue example, let's say if I have an animation to pop the dialogue in, and I actually want to, that's what I'm trying to tune. So which means that if the dialogue is already opened and it hot reloads, I need to close the dialogue and open it again to see the animation. So can I fine tune that?
What you can do is actually that you can still trigger a full reload, as it is called. So if you want to get rid of the current application state, you can just do the full reload, and then you can start again from the starting point that you saw with QML preview. So that's still possible, of course. You don't need to close the entire application and start it again.
Okay, there's another question here. Yep.
Hi. So you showed us, let's say, a simple example where you have only one item, QML object, but let's imagine that we have several components, and okay, in one of them we have loader which loads another component, and we change this root item. What will happen? Will it reload all the QML, or?
So actually what we are doing is we are really creating a diff of the currently applied state and the new state, and we try to modify as few properties, methods, logic as possible. So if it's not possible, for example, if you're, let's assume you're replacing a again, like a stupid simple example, sorry, but if you're replacing like a rectangle with an image, we cannot preserve the state of the rectangle and apply it to the image, of course. But if it's the same state and you're just changing properties, for example, or it even works with JavaScript logic, if you're changing a method in JavaScript, for example, it really just replaces that specific piece in the QML object tree and does not like get rid of the entire state. So there is a heuristic behind it that finds out what can be changed actually. And if it is possible to actually hot reload the change, if it's not possible, we also do a complete full reload. But if it's possible to actually exchange the application part that you changed, you're doing that hot reload and just replacing the things that are actually really modified.
Oh, so can I assume that, for instance, if I have a subcontroller which is written on CPP, and obviously there are some states inside that controller, but I'm changing the QML, so you will not reload this controller, right?
No, the C++ state, assuming you're having a C++ model for like controlling the state, this will keep in place. We are really only reloading the QML part.
Cool.
Which
Thanks.
is, actually a cool thing, given, for example, if working on an automotive navigation system where you're having a route in place that's still, routing, and you don't want to, like, recreate that state every time you want to iterate on your UI. That's really great because you have your C++ backend still running, and you're really only reloading the QML part that's connected via context properties, singletons, or whatever you're using.
Yeah, thanks.
There's another question here.
So, can you please detail a bit more, because I thought it was interesting how you can develop, for example, on my Windows machine, and I don't know, I think I need to have my Android and iOS connected to another machine that is running the live server, or and it's reloading the QML on the devices, or how is it working?
So actually from like the user interface, what you're seeing here is the Felgo live server, which is just a component that actually observes your code changes. And you're seeing the Felgo live client, which is your preview. And that Felgo live client is also available for iOS and for Android. So what you're actually doing is opening up the Felgo live client on your Android device. The only restriction is that you need to be in the same local network. So we're not doing that via cloud services, but we're doing it via WebSocket connection, so this stays in your private network. And what's actually happening is that we are then connecting like from the Android device to the Felgo live server. There is a new pop-up that asks us for accepting the connection, and as soon as you have the connection between the Android device and the Felgo live server on the desktop, you can start using it like you use it on desktop. So it reloads your code actually on your Android device that's in the same network as your PC is.
Very nice. And can you open the application manually, for example, from iOS, and have all the logs in the live server and be connected to it? Yeah.
Yeah. So you also see like the logs in here if you connect it to Android. That's like the single point of like a connection point. Where you can see your log output and also configure different settings that we are having for each individual live client.
And sorry, I have another question. So, can you talk a bit about the system limitation? Maybe I don't know. For example, does it work with CMake, with C++17, with Qt 6, or what are the minimum requirements to
actually? Good question. Actually, there are no minimum requirements. We are providing so there are the default live clients that you can use if you're only using QML code, but we're also providing a C++ library that you can link to your project. That was actually what I was mentioning with the second question. So if you're having C++ code that you want to integrate, you can build your own live client, so to say. So you're linking the live client module and then starting that application that's then enabled to actually reload your QML files. So the restriction here is just that actually the library we provide must match the Qt version that you are using. In terms of build systems, there are actually no restrictions, so it works with QMake, with CMake. You really only link one application one library to your application. You have one header file. There is one init function that you are adding in your development code, and that's actually all you need for integration.
Is it working with precompiled? Is it working with precompiled QML files?
For hot reloading, not actually. Okay. So what you can do is you can include your precompiled QML files, of course, and provide that in your application. But it's actually in the nature of QML, and in that case, in that specific way how we are using it, that we are using the file system for actually observing file changes. In that way, it would more be like, I guess, a disadvantage to first precompile QML files and then trying to hot reload those. So that's actually not the usual development workflow you would use with the hot reload.
More questions here?
Hi Alex, does Falgo already support Falgo Hot Reload? Does it already support Qt6?
Good question. Actually, we are right now still working on Qt6. Our, let's call it, internal release is ready for it. There is one reason why we are actually holding it back right now. That's Qt location that Maurice was talking about yesterday. Because as we have a strong focus on mobile platforms, we actually can't just tell our customers, okay, Qt location is gone, look for a different solution, and that's why Felgo still uses Qt 5.15 as main version, but we are providing the first marketplace build with Qt 6, I guess the next month or something like that, so still in summer.
Yeah, I know that it can be challenging, but it would be also beneficial if you would be able to just take a subset of Felgo SDK features like reloading and already port it to Qt 6.
Would actually be ideal. So as I mentioned, when talking to our customers, we did not see like that use case right now, because our customers are actually used to the fact that we are providing an update that does not break things backwards. But of course, if there is like a need for it, or if you're having like a specific use case in mind, we can also provide something upfront, of course.
Gotcha.
We won't do it just for a Felgo release, for a full Felgo release, because breaking things, and that's not what we intend to do.
Thank you.
So, are there more questions? If not, then thanks again, Alex, for all the clarifications and answers to the questions. And I guess it's the lunch break now.
Thank you.